going to be accused of burying the Vikings' lead when I don't spend the first 5 minutes of this broadcast reacting to the news that one of the most viable, at least in theory, quarterback options available to the Minnesota Vikings this offseason is now available. And believe me, in good time, it will be discussed on this program. But I'm going to need some help from several people, including one that we're going to have on today at 3:30, Kevin Seifert, on exactly what we are up to from a salary cap standpoint at other positions. Because we've already heard that because of salary cap issues, at least two veteran players on this team are probably not going to come back at the club. If they can't trade them, they're going to let them go, including Aaron Jones. I think Hargrave was another one. And now we get word via Intrepid reporting that Jonathan Grenard's future with the team is apparently in question. Once again, because of salary cap issues. Now, here's where I'm confused. What we've been told for years was the beauty of having a young phenom quarterback on his initial contract was that it opened the door for all kinds of other options that would also help, presumably, prevent you from getting into salary cap hell. And yet, we are apparently in such salary cap hell that if these stories are accurate, we're willing to trade away one of the most important defensive players on this team in his physical prime, in Jonathan Grenard. I don't get it. And I know his production wasn't the same last year. I understand all of that. But none of this makes a lot of sense to me. It certainly is very damning regarding the managing of the cap. I don't know how much of that you put on the already departed, already dismissed Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, how much you put that on our capologist, who's now the acting general manager, Rob Brzezinski. But I guess I didn't realize that among the possibilities was we might have to dump Jonathan Grenard. Now, I'm presuming we're going to ask for a lot, but regardless of what you're asking for, when you are in a position where you have to consider making available one of, your most important defensive players, as I said, in his prime, that's not good. That's not a good look for the collaborative folks at TCO Performance Center. And as our 3:30 guest has already pointed out, I believe via X, Grenard is due $19 million in non-guaranteed money in 2026. And for context, he notes top dollar for an edge rusher in the NFL is $40 million per year. Micah Parsons. Average of top 10 edge rushers for 2026 is $27.9 million a year. Then you look at the Grenard number, you say, well, that doesn't even sound that unreasonable. And yet, we're apparently in a position where we have to consider accepting the best offer we can get on him. So there's a lot of questions that have nothing to do with the quarterback spot, which we will not ignore on this program. We always cover it, and we will again today with, as I said, Seifert at 3:30. But this stuff's important too. Who exactly are you going to have left? And I get, some of the discussion has to do with other options, including Dallas Turner, who is ascending. But it's difficult for me to believe this defense has a chance to be as productive as it was a year ago, or maybe even better, when you're in such dire straits on the cap that you're going to have to consider making a move on Grenard. Now, maybe this is posturing. Maybe the Vikings are going to come to a deal, an agreement with Grenard, that will allow him to stay here, because players sometimes are willing to make adjustments. I think he's probably too much in his prime, though, to want to do too much with that. I mean, I think I expected it with T.J. Hawkinson, quite frankly. I expected it with the two other players who've already been named because of their relative careers, and in the case of Aaron Jones, his age issue, how much he's got left in the tank, and the fact that he gets injured almost as often as J.J. McCarthy. But I guess I'm not quite ready to believe that we're fine. Dallas Turner is ready to take the baton and basically play so well that we'll never even remember Jonathan Grenard's name. And the irony of this, too, is basically the trade we did was Grenard for Danielle Hunter, which I still don't think in of itself looks particularly good. I thought Danielle looked awfully good the times I saw him this last season. I don't know what his production numbers were, but he looked still awfully impressive to me. So, I don't know. I'll be curious to get Seifert's view on this. Again, I just don't think there's much chance Grenard was going to take less money. Now, was he looking for what they call in the business a market correction, as some have suggested? Maybe. And then maybe that's what we're saying. We can't play those games right now. But you got to think of them as players, too, and what they represent in your lineup. So, again, quarterback gets most of the attention. It should get most of the attention. But it's got to be to a Vikings fan very exasperating to think that we've been told for basically since we drafted McCarthy, well, we can't spend big money on a quarterback like we used to. Stupid. There's no money left to do other things, and presumably to keep those other things. But it turns out that, I guess, we're somehow facing the worst of both worlds. We're still on a rookie quarterback contract unless and until we sign Kyler Murray, who now apparently is available. Right? The Schefter story that just was reported on not that long ago. Cardinals have informed Kyler Murray that they intend to release him on the first day of the league year, which is next Wednesday. Barring a trade between now and then, Arizona already owes him, $36.8 million guaranteed in 2026. And another $19.5 million would have triggered on March 15 for 2027. He will now be moving on. And by all accounts, we're supposed to be interested in Kyler Murray. Or at least he's supposed to be at the top of the list of people who are available, because we're going to be able to get him under those conditions at a very decent price. Does it bother anybody that the Colts are bored with him? The Cardinals are bored with him? And I know they have their own reasons, and a new home sometimes can change everything, but I don't know. But I don't think we should get so fixated with the quarterback position that we don't pay attention to the other moves that this club is making and where, indeed, they might lead this club. Barreiro and Blakemore with you until 6:30 tonight. Welcome back to the Bumper to Bumper program. We also affectionately refer to it as the afternoon Aardvark. And we'll give you the rest of the guest lineup probably in just a couple minutes because it's deep and it's distinguished from start to finish. I can't call it an A-section topic because it's not serious enough given all the serious stuff that's going on in the A-section, as we talked about yesterday with Michael Hurley. But it's a non-toy department subject that caught my eye. It's, I guess, what you would classify as the latest example. Well, we have like a million forms of shaming. I don't know if it's a new form of shaming. It's a form of shaming that I'd not heard before that I think we should examine, should take a little bit of time to talk about it. So, by the way, we allegedly want what did I see? We want a second-day draft pick if we are going to consider moving on Grenard. Is that what I saw? I think that's what I saw as well. So we'll see where that indeed goes. Now, again, the Grenard, it depends on what analytic you want to believe. His raw numbers in terms of sacks way down last year. I think his pressure rate was still considered top 10 in the National Football League. If you recall, we talked to him at training camp. He was the talk of training camp. Well, he seemed to be the dominant player, period. I don't think that paid off over the course of the season. Injuries had something to do with that as well. But I always say be careful because people get excited, I get, about draft picks, and draft picks, are important until you attach a player to it. And then you don't feel quite as excited about the pick. So a player's going to have to go a long way to be as good as I think Grenard has been as an NFL player. So we'll see. We'll get to Seifert's view, as I mentioned, at the bottom of the hour as well. Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line has indeed been rebooted at 64686. Do you guys have to dump anybody? Do you have any salary cap woes, or are you so well managed that you're not even going to have to make any of these kinds of moves that the Vikings apparently have to?
I mean, there might be some guys that they don't re-sign in order to not, but they might restructure some guys, but I don't think it's quite to the extent of this here. It's just straight getting rid of guys.
Interesting. All right, fair enough. Just want to be sure. Go ahead. So you kind of got your cheap shot in there.
A little bit. I could go much further than that. You could. I wouldn't.
All right, let's get our first pause in. We'll examine some text, prepare for Seifert at the bottom of the hour. One of three outstanding guest details yet to come on a rather balmy Tuesday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St.
Every game is a big game when it's wild hockey. You can feel the intensity, the excitement at Grand Casino Arena this season. Get your tickets today at wild.com/tickets, wild.com/tickets.
Steve from Edina writes, Dan, if the Vikings are set up for winning now, with all the potential options out there at quarterback, wouldn't it make sense that the only and best option is Kirko Chains? He's already familiar with the organization, team, individual players, J-Jets included. Kyler Murray or any other option will require getting familiar with the team, playbook, etc. Cousins could be the next Sam Darnold, and J.J. McCarthy would have another year to learn and work on mechanics. Dan writes, Danny in Atlanta, if we're not able to get a tier 2/3 QB this free agency, would you field calls on Justin Jefferson if you were the GM? Willow, Mark Rosen's cat guy. Who are we kidding? Tear it down to the studs and restart. Unfortunately, with no GM in place, there's no chance KOC allows that to happen. 952 guy writes, I feel like Kyler Murray's floor is a bit higher than most people are giving him credit for. Mina Kimes on ESPN made the point that when the Vikings signed Sam Darnold, his career QB rating was significantly worse than what Murray's current career QB rating is, which she said is about league average at the moment. Her point being that the baseline play for Murray isn't as bad as people think it is. Sweeney's guy, hi Dan, indeed, Daniil Hunter played 17 games last year and had 15 sacks. Grenard played 12 games, had 3. Seems like another bad deal from Kwesi. That's Sweeney's guy. And, of course, they weren't traded for each other, but it ended up being a trade of sorts. Wolves will be in the playoff fold. Twins' success on hold. Faber, Hughes, and Boldy got gold. Wild and fine. Hey, Danny boy, this is from 651 guy. If it's Adam from Uptown, if edge rushers are being paid similarly to mid-tier quarterbacks, doesn't it make sense to use the same cap methodology in drafting a rookie QB for an edge? Especially if this is a deep edge draft. I know, deep draft. It's always a deep draft, and it's always the guy that we project is going to be there and all that. And I don't have that much faith. And I still don't think the message this sends is very good. What it confirms to me is that their salary cap situation was even more dire than we thought. And I'm going to get on Seifert. Kevin Seifert is going to join us at 3:30 on that. So you guys, I never got any sense regarding the cap issues that you guys thought they were going to be desperate enough that they were going to have to make a move on Grenard. I get it on some of the other guys who were named. I just don't think that's a particularly helpful look. Does Kyler Murray still have the insane requirements for his contract, like having his phone and friends on the sideline? I'm not familiar with that one. Is that true? Has that been reported before? All I remembered was the rap that he wasn't. Wasn't there like something in his contract he was going to get? Was he was going to get a bonus, or that they had a right to hold him to a certain amount of study regarding X's and O's, and a little less study on what was the game that he allegedly played a bunch of?
Allegedly, he was a big Call of Duty player.
Call of Duty, which you are too.
I was at one point, yeah.
But you matured past that, is what you're saying. Yeah. Well, that's probably a good sign.
I just got replaced by other games, that's all.
Dan, it's been downhill since the water bottle bath. Can you and JG do all the free agent math? Is JJ practicing his footwork on the doggy walking path? Wolves in 5. Sports Illustrated reporting Vikings offering Grenard for a second-round pick. SI reporter suggesting the Colts should counter with Richardson and a fourth-round pick. No, and no, writes lawyer Tom. Well, another name I guess we're going to have to ask Seifert about is Daniel Jones. Now, I think the Colts are making him are attaching the transition tag to him. That's one of those deals where he can negotiate with other teams, but then the Colts have the chance to match whatever that offer is. And I think in the transition tag mode, Jones is locked in at like $37.5 million for the upcoming season, right in there. So I didn't even know. Now, again, Jones is coming off, obviously, a very significant operation, Achilles. We know all about that here, but we'll see if there's anything to that. I have absolutely no idea. Let me give you the short version on the non-toy department item that is not really a section in its importance. Are you familiar? Because I at least want to put it on the board, and then we can get, I hope, some text and get back to it a little bit later. Are you familiar with a concept? I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I didn't know much about it. Are you familiar with the concept of sleep shaming? Sleep shaming is apparently also becoming the latest, I guess, example of shaming that has experts concerned and talking.
Can I take a stab at it?
Sure.
Is it, because I feel like this way a lot, if you sleep in past 9:30, 10 a.m., you're considered, well, you're lazy. You've wasted half the day. How could you possibly do that? Am I in the ballpark? That's
one of them.
Okay.
There's a number of forms of it. There's also the form of shaming somebody because they want to leave whatever event they're at early because they want to put their teeth in the glass at 10 o'clock. They get shamed for that. There's another form of it, apparently, which is if you don't get enough sleep, however, whenever you go to bed or wake up, you get mocked for not taking care of yourself enough to put yourself in a position to do your job better. The quote here from a psychologist named Wendy Troxel is, we get shamed if we express our need for sleep, and we get shamed if we don't sleep enough. Says it's just, you get it kind of coming and going, that there's a lot of judgment going out there. There's a quote early, the first person quoted is somebody named Chrissy Lawler. She saw her social life dry up a while back, fewer invitations, snarky comments about her behavior. A good friend told her that she no longer wanted to hang out. When Lawler asked what was wrong, she was surprised by the answer. You're not that fun anymore. You leave early to go to bed, her friends told her. Lawler, 38, living in Vegas, says, I was devastated. People turned away from me because I prioritized my sleep. So Now, new source of worry, as the Wall Street Journal writes, sleep shame, the subtle and not so subtle ways that people judge and undermine how and when we rest. If you're like Lawler, or early bird, you're considered boring. A night owl who sleeps in, what a sloth. You enjoy an afternoon nap. How irresponsible. And how much shut-eye did you get last night anyway? Doesn't matter. It's never enough. There's an ancillary subject to get to in this. And that is all the smartwatches and rings that can allegedly evaluate your sleep. And I'm not sure they work for us or against us because, again, if you felt you slept reasonably well, but then you check your score on your Oura Ring or your watch or whatever, and it says you're an idiot. You had the worst night of sleep in the history of mankind. What's wrong with you? Then I'm not sure that helps. I'm not sure that's very constructive or very positive. So then you end up becoming prisoner to what the watch says or believe whatever the watch or the ring says. And instead of it being a tool, do we end up being almost controlled by these devices in a way that it doesn't end up being the tool that it was supposed to be? So we're going to try to mix that in the rest of today's program. An outstanding guest lineup today that, as I mentioned, not only includes the one and only Kevin Seifert, but according to the uglydeck.com guest lineup, we've also got Paul Bloom at 4:15. You had him on your list, right? Blakemore?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Luigi at 4:30. And Paul Bloom is at 5:30. So
yes.
It's 3:30, 4:30, 5:30 on the guests. But it's Kevin Seifert coming up next with a lot to talk about beyond the quarterback position, although that, again, will be a part of it when he joins us next. Back with Mr. Seifert in just a couple minutes.
Don't let this one get away. The Northwest Sports Show is March 5th through the 8th at the Minneapolis Convention Center. It's the newest fishing and outdoor gear, boats, RVs, travel and power sports, and you can join Nordo, fans Nordo, Friday, 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. for the Friday Night Fish Fry. Details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
The uglydeck.com guest lineup on the Bumper to Bumper program is deep and distinguished. It will include Lou Nanny at 4:30. It will be Paul Bloom joining us with some breaking court-related news at 5:30 this evening. And Kevin Seifert, kind enough to join us now via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Are you old enough, Seifert, to remember the comic duo of Cheech and Chong?
Oh, yes. I think some of their movies came out at a time and an age that I was not allowed to see them in real time, but I eventually did see them.
You did see them. Are you familiar with a song that I celebrated yesterday that, in fact, a few people are texting today saying they looked it up and actually enjoyed it, thought it was quite catchy? A song that actually made it up the top 40 charts, would have been before your time, but did you ever hear of a song called Basketball Jones?
No, sir.
Yeah, they did a song called Basketball Jones, which was an homage to the game of basketball. And it actually climbed, I think it reached number 17 on the top 40 charts in the mid-1970s. Later tonight, look it up, Basketball Jones. And you might actually enjoy it. I'm glad that a couple of the texters did, and they say they're very pleased with it, and now they can't get it out of their heads because that's a long, long time ago. All right, more recently, Seifert, your Vikings continue to make, I guess you could say, news, even if a lot of this stuff isn't official. I want to start with the latest reporting. I think this, again, and correct me if I'm wrong here, originated with Schefter on Grenard. The suggestion seemingly being that the Vikings, in some form of salary cap hell, are going to be willing to talk about trading him, I guess, depending on the offer. And I got to admit, I did not see this one coming. I saw a couple of the others coming that you've reported previously, but given his salary number for next year, given, I think, his importance, even albeit coming off not a great year. And given that I don't think his contract, as it stands at least, is all that unreasonable, to me, this is concerning or worrisome. So can you translate what this means in real life?
Yeah, so basically Jonathan Grenard is halfway through the 4-year contract that he signed prior to the 2024 season. There's no guaranteed money left in the deal, which is always something that players and agents pay attention to for obvious reasons. And he has I think he's scheduled to earn $19 million if he's on the roster, of course, and his salary cap number is pretty high at $22 million. So the way to bring that salary cap number down is either to restructure, which certainly would be any team's preference, or to do an extension that reduces your cap number but increases salaries in future years. And so they have been talking about that apparently and are not at a point where they have an agreement. And if they're not able to come up with an agreement that would allow the cap number to come down from the Vikings point of view, and for the guaranteed cash or just the cash in general to go up from Jonathan Grenard's view, then maybe they end up having to move on and trade him. And this is not an example of an aging veteran who has seen his better days and is kind of clinging to previous performances. I mean, this is a guy, one of the best players in the entire team, one of the most respected players in the entire team. As you noted, did not have the sack numbers last year, but his pressure rate, which is kind of a more inclusive measure of performance, was higher than it was 2 years ago when he had 12.5 sacks. And so he was still very much a force, even if he was missing those handful of sack opportunities. And so it's very much a fluid situation. It's very possible they could come up with an agreement here before the start of the new league year. But the fact that it's gotten to a point where the Vikings, it's known that the Vikings are at least willing to consider trade offers, then it's reached a certain point. And so that they would be left in a position where they have someone that is an encouraging person to promote in Dallas Turner, who finished the season very strongly last year. But obviously pass rushers are a premium. They're the second most important position in the game besides quarterback, and you don't necessarily want to be in the business of parting ways with guys who are at the point in their careers that Jonathan Grenard is.
All right, so, I mean, I would say, again, we had stories previously suggesting that a couple of salary cap casualties were likely to be Aaron Jones, and who's the other one, Hargrave?
Yeah.
And I think for most Vikings fans, that sounded reasonable, right? Because something was going to have to give. And obviously, especially in the case of Jones, he's longer in the tooth. He has difficulty staying healthy, et cetera, and had a pretty sizable cap number, as I recall it. So I think people got that. Yeah, okay, it happens. You got to make adjustments and all that. But to me, the message this conveys, unless this is all a bluff, or maybe we end up with an unbelievable haul for Grenard, to me, if I'm a Vikings fan, this troubles me a little bit more, shouldn't it?
It's definitely troubling that there's a possibility that one of your best players in his prime is not going to be on the roster. Again, I guess there's a little bit left to be determined in terms of what the return would be if they end up trading him. But I do think this is more than just the Vikings. It's not simply the Vikings drawing a hard line on their salary cap issues or being cheap or not wanting to commit as much cash as they did, even though they have committed lots of cash over the past 2 years. I think it's a two-way street. And I think if you look at the top 10 pass rushers, first of all, if you look at the very top of the list of pass rushers, they're at $40 million a year now, and that's Micah Parsons with the Packers. And I'm not saying Jonathan Grenard is Micah Parsons or should be compensated that way, but even if you look at the top 10, the average of the top 10 with Parsons in it is like $27 million a year. And so then you start getting a little closer to where Jonathan Grenard is. I mean, you could make an argument that he's potentially one of the top 10 pass rushers in the league. And so whether he should bounce into that 20 plus a year category or not is something to think that's not a completely unreasonable thing for him to be asking. And if he were on the open market, I'm sure he would get it. And so I do think it's a two-way street of a guy who's probably outperformed his contract and a team that has limited options to address that. And so, Rob Brzezinski made the point last week, the salary cap is not a myth. And, and I've always said, like, you can do whatever your priorities are, but if your priority is anything other than further hampering yourself down the road, then maybe there's a point where you have to draw a line in a Grenard negotiations. Now, I'm not saying they've done that yet, but I'm saying it's at least possible that they're going to get to that point if they're already amenable to a trade.
Well, here's, I think, where I think you Jackals have misled us a little bit on the Vikings salary situation, because, again, what we kept hearing in the McCarthy era, as the JJ era got off the ground, at least in theory, is this is the beauty of having to spend very little money at the quarterback position when he's on his rookie deal or his first deal, and that gives us opportunity to go out and do lots of other things. I don't think any of you told us, well, among the things that might come back to haunt us when we get aggressive in other areas is we still, even with very little money invested in the quarterback position, we still aren't even sure we can afford an in his prime player to continue to pay him. Right? I mean, that doesn't sound very good to me.
But I don't look at it as, well, I guess you can say can't afford. They can afford him at whatever salary he wants, but there are different people making decisions now as well. Yeah. And I've always said, what I say about the salary cap is that it forces you to publicize your priorities. And they could definitely sign Jonathan Grenard right now for what he's asking for. It would add to the amount of money that they're going to have to account for later. And so you have to manage the cap in an overall, based on your particular overall priorities. And I think that's what we're seeing now. A little bit of a change potentially in the priorities, given that there's a new general manager essentially right now in Rob Brzezinski, and whose background is in salary cap, and who said last week that he viewed it as his responsibility, and I'm going to write more about this in the coming days, but he viewed it as inherent in his job and his responsibility to provide the guardrails that keep you from getting off track in a long-term sense. And so I will not begin to tell you that I anticipated it, that a potential consequence of their salary cap management this offseason would lead to them parting ways with Jonathan Grenard, and it still might not. But it appears that that's the consequence of their establishment of priorities in the post-Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah world.
Can you reduce it to this? Did they choose, or are they choosing, potentially, because again, he's not off the team yet, are they choosing Hockenson over Grenard?
No, I'm not saying that. And I don't know that, I think that they're having talks with TJ Hockenson, and every contract discussion is different. Right. And frankly, not all of them become as public as the one we're talking about now. And so I can't say for sure that they've made that decision. I can't say for sure that, for fear of this being aggregated, I guess I can't say for sure that TJ Hockenson is going to be back on his current contract. He's probably going to have to do something as well, and maybe it'll be easier for them to reach that safe middle ground with him than it might be with Grenard, or maybe it won't be. I don't know, but I'm not saying they've chosen one or the other. They have, just to get under the cap, they have to reduce by $43 million, and then they have to reduce more to be able to do anything in free agency and sign their draft picks. So you're probably talking about needing to come up with $50 million in cap space, and there's a lot of combinations that they can do that with, and some of them will be painless in terms of restructures with a Brian O'Neill or a Justin Jefferson or some others, and some of them will be more painful. And so, but I would not reduce it to they chose Hawkinson over Grenard because I can't say for sure that that's the case with Hawkinson right now.
Christian in Rosemount offers a Vikings conspiracy theory for you. I think he wants to believe this. The question is whether there's any reason to believe it. Is it possible the Vikings, he writes, are looking to shed more salary and amass draft picks in an effort to obtain a truly established quarterback a la Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow? Vikings brass have said multiple times they're looking at everything. They would certainly need more draft capital and cap space to make this happen. The Grenard news makes sense under this context. What do you think?
Yeah, I've had a couple people ask me that and suggest that, and I can't deny that if that were the case, that this would make some sense. You'd have to part ways with some people that you don't want to part ways with. But I just don't. And I know I've been the one quoting them saying we're looking at all options. I just don't know that any of those guys that they're talking about are available. I don't think Joe Burrow's available. If Justin Herbert's available, that would be news to me as well. And so that would make sense as a way to do that, but I don't know that that's an option in either case. Looking at all options, are those two options? I don't have any reporting to suggest that they are.
All right, so the word breaks again via Schefter. Let me one other Grenard question. You mentioned, you know, sometimes this stuff gets public, sometimes it doesn't. When it does get public, what does that tell you? Is that an agent wanting it out? Is it a team? In this case, the Vikings wanting it out in terms of seeing what maybe we might be able to get for him. How does it, if it goes this route, how does it get there?
I don't know the case in this particular instance, but it could be either. There's times when there's, an agent might want people to know. It's one of the most efficient ways to let other teams know that somebody's available, and it could be sometimes the team would put that out to let other teams know to start making bids. But and I'm not sure which one it is, but to me, like the one takeaway I have is that when it does become public, I take it seriously because it means it's bubbled up to a point that they're certainly not close on a deal, and maybe one side is frustrated or one side has realized that, hey, it's just not going to work out. And so I take it seriously when it bubbles up to that point because a lot of the preliminary stuff is probably past us.
Kyler Murray, I guess now, again, Schefter breaking that next week it'll become official that Arizona is going to release him, which I don't think is a very big surprise at this point, given the amount of money that they still owe him. They're ready to move on. And presumably that means wherever else he goes, he's going to be very reasonable in what his demands are. You have him towards the top of the Vikings list of individual quarterbacks who, at least qualify in that he will be available and has had some experience as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Do you get any closer sense about how strongly the Vikings might feel about him?
I think I mean, when I say at the top of the list, like I'm saying, I think he's at or near the top of their list. My own personal list probably doesn't matter quite as much, but I think it makes a lot of sense from my perspective. But I think, when they're looking at it and as they're looking at the possible options, my understanding is that they consider that one of their best options. Now he'll be a free agent, so he'll be able to make choices. There's no trade here, so it's not like he has to go wherever the Cardinals send him. I look at it and, just trying to think through it from his perspective and from the Vikings perspective. And you say, like, what are the reasons that it wouldn't happen? I mean, they're probably objectively the best landing spot for a quarterback, given the personnel that they have and where they're at as a sort of an overall franchise. And, and from their perspective, like if they want a certain, as Rob Brzezinski said last week, a certain baseline of quarterback play of the people we expect to be available, is there anybody that we think is more likely than Kyler Murray to provide them that? I mean, there's some others who probably could, but who's the likeliest one? And so there's a lot of reasons to think that they both would be atop each other's lists. We'll see if that becomes the case, but I certainly don't think they've ruled them out, and I certainly don't think that they have anybody like way ahead of him either. And so I think it'll be very relevant to watch and see what happens once he is officially on the market a week from tomorrow. And I think there's other people that the Vikings think highly of as well, Geno Smith being among them. But those are two very different cases, in my opinion, and I think in the Vikings' opinion as well. And we will see how they move through their priorities there.
Kevin Seifert covers the Vikings National Football League for ESPN and ESPN.com. Do we know, or do we assume, that given, the amount of money Kyler's got coming, and given his circumstance, that a team is releasing him, that he is going to be willing to take a 1-year deal?
I guess I'm sure he'll see what offers there are, but that might be in his best interest too, because he's already going to be paid almost $37 million this year by the Cardinals. That's locked in no matter what else happens. And I guess if another team is out there wanting to give him a multi-year deal with multi-years of guarantees, he'd have to consider it. But probably the best case scenario for him is to go to a good team where he can be at his best for 1 year and then hit the free agent market or get extended by that particular team off of a much better performance and much better situation than he's coming off of in 2025. And so I think the conventional wisdom is that that's not a bad option for him, is to have a 1-year deal. And then, because you're already protected financially, and then you go out and in your mind have a great year, and then your value skyrockets for a year from now.
Are you in the group that believes that whatever smoke that has been alleged regarding Vikings having some interest in Daniel Jones, that there is no fire there is no real smoke? Jones, I think I think the Colts, it's either been reported or maybe they've declared it, I don't know which, that they've signed him they're going to sign him to the transition tag, which, as I understand it, means I think like $37.5 million 1 year, and then they can, other teams can make an offer, and then they have a chance to match. Is there any reason to think we would think that ambitiously, or that we might get into any of that?
I think first of all, I think they were telling the truth when they said that they're evaluating all options and haven't ruled anything out. And so that did include Daniel Jones. I think that they view that option as something that would be interesting if for some reason talks broke down and the Colts decided not to put a tag on him. And so then you see what the value is there. Whether they're lurking in a way to offer Daniel Jones something that he would sign and put the Colts in position to match. I guess that would be surprising to me, especially given how much less money they could commit to a Kyler Murray or even a Geno Smith or somebody else. Even if Aaron Rodgers were to come up again at some point, I think they'd get him for less than what the transition tag was for sure. And so it seems like now that the tag is on, it seems like it would be a very expensive commitment to make that they're not looking to make at that position. And the reward of Daniel Jones over some of the cheaper options, I don't know if they'll think that those are worth that extra value. But up until that point, I think everybody's connecting the Vikings with every quarterback out there, in part because it makes sense, but in part because they really are looking at least considering what the possibilities are with every option.
And I would assume then you're already in salary cap hell, and then you've got another significant salary issue you've added to it by spending that much money at the quarterback position. Is Murray of the sort, we may have covered this before, but now that it's more concrete that he's going to at least be available, do you have to tell Murray when you sign him that you are a starting quarterback in 2026?
I think so. He might be of the mind that he could come in here and certainly beat out J.J. McCarthy, but I also think that if he's going to be taking a 1-year deal and going to a place to kind of rejuvenate his career, he's going to want the clearest path to the starting to the field as possible. And so that's sort of the central question I've been asking all offseason is, would they be able to get the people that they want without promising them a starting job? And in some cases, they probably could. But I would think that, and frankly, like to me, to sign Kyler Murray and try to sell him as competition for J.J. McCarthy is like not even like a credible public stance. I don't know what they would say if but like even internally, like every player I think would know what the deal is going in. And then if JJ outperforms him, then everybody will see it with their own eyes, and that will change the calculus. But it's hard for me just from a 30,000 foot view to say that Kyler Murray comes in here as competition for J.J. McCarthy. And so whether they have to explicitly say it or not to him, like wouldn't it almost be assumed? I don't know. Maybe am I estimating Kyler Murray's pedigree in the NFL? I think that he's started enough games and performed well enough when he's been healthy that it would not seem to me to be conducive to an open competition.
Well, and I dare say, unless you get lucky and literally no one else, you got no competition for him, I think that's part of the reason that even if the Vikings would prefer not to commit to that level, that you'd almost probably have no choice. I know he's the quarterback whisperer. I know all of that. He's highly regarded in working with at least most quarterbacks, with the notable exception so far of J.J. McCarthy. But does Kyler fit KOC's offense? Do we have any reason to believe that KOC would moderate or alter his offense and his philosophy enough to fit what Murray at his best might offer?
People have made a lot about this, and he hasn't really played in a lot of, over his 7 years. I don't know if maybe 1 or 2 years that he had was in a offense that's similar at all to what Kevin O'Connell would be asking him to do. But if you just watch him, like he makes the kind of throws that the Vikings want, whether it's layered passes over the middle or, off-schedule passes when needed outside the pocket. I don't think that they would be wanting him to play hero ball as much as he felt compelled to play in Arizona. I think he has the arm and the arm talent and arm strength to make all those throws. So I don't see that as being a roadblock. I don't see Kevin O'Connell needing to make like massive changes to his offense to fit Kyler Murray. I think that Kyler Murray has the skills to, this is a guy who, he was the number one overall pick, and if he was 6'3" instead of whatever he measured at the combine, like he would have been considered a legendary draft pick, and it probably would have, made the perception of him a lot different over the past few years. But I do not think that that's something that's a deal breaker. And I don't think that he's going to have to massively change the way he plays, or Kevin O'Connell is going to have to massively change his offense. Now, are there other guys who would fit in more seamlessly to the things that they've done? Would Geno Smith fit more seamlessly into it? Probably, because we've seen over the years him play in that kind of way a lot more. But I don't think that there's like a red flag that tells me that Kyler Murray's skill set doesn't fit what Kevin O'Connell wants quarterbacks to do.
Thank you for your flexibility today. We'll keep things are going to heat up pretty quickly here, right? I mean, we would assume.
It already feels like they are. I feel like we're already at the point where we got to set everybody on notifications to make sure we're not missing anything.
We'll keep you on speed dial. Thank you.
Okay, Dan.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Top of the hour pause is coming up presently. As I mentioned, Louis is going to join us to talk puck at who knows what else at 4:30. Fox 9 intrepid reporter Paul Bloom covering some interesting breaking news today at the courthouse. He is scheduled for 5:30 this evening, and lots of other controversial subjects for us to explore when we return.